Now, sport television rights continues to be a hot topic with the Africa Cup of Nations now approaching. SABC looks set to broadcast the tournament while SuperSport struggle to strike a deal that will allow them to screen the event. Cash and Sports Nqobile Ndovu, who's a sports business expert, now joins us live to unpack this very topic on television rights. Good evening and welcome to Newzroom Afrika. Nqobile.
Good evening, Lebo, and welcome to the new year. Welcome to 2024.
Yeah, compliments of the new year. And it starts obviously with the big one, the Africa Cup of Nations, which takes place in Côte d'Ivoire just next week. But how did we as South Africans find ourselves in a place where SuperSport is struggling or struggled to win the rights to broadcast the AFCON?
It's very interesting. And I think to give people some context, I need to broaden the scope beyond South Africa and take us to Togo, a small country on the Gulf of Guinea with a population of less than 9 million people and a GDP of less than $10 billion. A small company from Togo called Newzroom TV acquired the rights, both free-to-air and pay TV rights, to broadcast all CAF competition between 2023 and 2025, including the Africa Cup of Nations, the Africa Football League, the CAF Women's Champions League, Men's Champions League, and all other competitions. In total, it was 13 competitions that they acquired the rights for. At the moment of that deal being agreed, it essentially meant that anyone who wanted to pick up these rights would have to go to Newzroom TV to pick up those rights, including SuperSport, SABC, and any other broadcaster on the continent. Now, Newzroom TV is a very small broadcaster. They're only active in 16 francophone countries, and at last check, they had less than 1 million subscribers across that base. And they've now become the kingmakers in terms of sports broadcast rights across the continent. And when SuperSport went and tried to get the rights, they found it difficult.
Sure, but with it being such a small player in the game, the New World TV, how did they acquire the rights of all the tournaments that will be taking place on the continent? And almost, it sounds like they overtook SuperSport or even SABC.
Yeah, so the way that it works is that CAF put out a tender for broadcast rights. And according to our sources, Newzroom TV came out with the highest fee. They were willing to pay a higher fee than anyone else, more than SuperSport, more than Star Times, who was the other major pay TV broadcaster. SABC generally wouldn't have been in that fight in any case because they generally don't go and try to sub-license or to license rights at that level. They usually sign smaller sub-license agreements with the likes of SuperSport. But this time they managed to get those rights directly from Newzroom TV. But essentially what Newzroom TV did is that we don't know where the money comes from. The entity itself is difficult to understand because it's not known who owns Newzroom TV, where the funding comes from. Although there have been rumors about Togolese government support and support from FIFA, these rumors aren't corroborated and we don't actually know where the money comes from. But essentially they stumped up the money to bid and spend more than SuperSport.
Now, broadcasters are a big part of elite sport, Nqobile. Does this now mean that they can hold federations to ransom?
I don't think they can hold federations to ransom because the federation itself comes into the discussion with the broadcaster and dictates where the games will be shown and at what fee they would want to be paid for those games. So the rights holder of the federation still has the trump card in terms of saying where we want these games to be broadcast and how much money we want for these games. They can't control what then happens in the sub-license agreements in terms of because New World is such a small player, who do they then sell the rights onto in order to get more people watching the sport? And that's where the risk comes in for CAF as the rights holder here, is that they know that Newzroom TV is a small broadcaster, but they went and signed the agreement anyway because they offered them more money. Now, whether they were involved in the subsequent agreements in terms of how do you then spread the rights to other broadcasters so that we have the same type of reach as what we had in our previous deals, where SuperSport was the incumbent rights holder, we don't know. And whether they will then be able to recoup the money to pay for the rights and continue the relationship with New World TV, we also don't know, because that's only going to happen in the future. So it's getting very tricky in terms of sports broadcast rights, and the next year to year and a half will be very interesting to see what happens.
Now, is the issue of sports rights more complicated on the African continent than perhaps Europe, given the different regions that the continent has?
It is probably more complicated in Europe because the games are much more watched. The rights are increasing at rates, or the rights fees are increasing at rates that some broadcasters can't stomach. So you will have a situation like, for instance, in the UK, where Sky and BBC have had to share rights, where some people have to watch games on different packages because it's just not possible to get everything on one platform. And I think actually that's part of the beauty of what we essentially had with SuperSport up until now, in that essentially you could pay for one platform and get to watch everything. But that apple cart is now totally being thrown out the window. We are in a whole new ball game now in terms of African sports broadcasting, in that generally for most of English-speaking Africa, which is what SuperSport covers, because they don't have those rights, you now have to go and sign up for, for some countries outside of South Africa, you now have to go and sign up with Star Times to get these rights. Luckily for us, the SABC went and got these rights, and they will be broadcasting all of the matches. But Africa is becoming more complicated, but Europe is far more complicated in that there's many other players with a lot of money, and they bid against each other, and they force these rights to be split up amongst the different broadcasters, making subscribers have to go and sign up various packages to watch a holistic sports experience.
Nqobile, previously what we'd see with SuperSport perhaps is that they have many platforms for the viewers to watch the games. Now, with the rights having been acquired by SABC, and they're saying the games will be available to the fans, how will the fans be able to watch those games that need multiple channels to be able to be broadcast on?
That's a critical question. The SABC's primary platforms is SABC 1, 2, and 3, and then they've got the DTT channel, there's OpenView, and SABC Sport, which is available on the app. That's still not enough channels because SuperSport has multiple channels. But the SABC also heavily relies on their core product, which is their telenovelas and their soapy shows, the likes of Generations and such. And those shows generate a lot of revenue for them in terms of advertising revenue. So the decisions now have to be made, and I can't actually answer the question because the SABC hasn't specified to say which games will be broadcast on which channel at what time. We don't actually know that yet. I think we'll probably only know that in the coming 2 or 3 days. But it'll be very interesting to see how they balance this issue of the stuff that Abo Mama and Abo Mkhulu like to watch versus the nation's interest in sport and Bafana Bafana and the other AFCON matches. Because if they're going to broadcast all of the matches, we know that probably SABC will get all of, SABC 1 or SABC 3 will get all of the Bafana games. But then what happens to the other games? Yeah. And will people still be able to watch them, knowing that DTT or digital terrestrial television has become a problem and not everyone can access that? Or do they put them on OpenView, or do they put them on the SABC Plus app? And can the app even handle that? So we don't know, but there are lots of questions to be answered.
Now, that is a fair statement. We'll definitely have to wait for the next couple of days just to see in terms of scheduling. Lastly, before I let you go, how do you now see the latest development with the CAF rights affecting local viewers going forward and into the future?
Well, for local viewers, it's not so much of a train smash because the SABC has picked up the rights between now and 2025, and they've got AFCON qualifiers, they've got the CHAN 2024, Champions League 2023, 2024, the women's competitions as well. It's not going to be a problem between now and 2025. What could be a problem is what happens in terms of multi-choice and their appetite for African football. The PSL rights, for instance, are coming up for renewal at this moment. If the view is, well, we've lost out on CAF competition, we don't necessarily see the value in PSL competition, where does that money come from for the PSL to be able to fund itself? And those negotiations are going to be very critical for the local game. For SA viewers, will they then have to switch to the SABC to watch those games? We don't know. But if you currently have a DStv subscription, because the SABC channels are already on
Nqobile, I'm so sorry to have to come in there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but we will delve into this one a little bit more in the next couple of days, because I feel like we've just scratched the top of that topic with regards to sports television rights. That is the sports business expert of Cash and Sports, Nqobile Ndovu, giving us a little bit of an analysis on the ongoing AFCON viewership debate. For now, that is that in sports. The headlines will follow at the top of the hour. Stay with us right here on Newzroom Afrika.